The alarm blared through the cold concrete halls of ADX Florence, red lights flashing, steel doors locking, radios crackling. In one of America's most secure cell blocks, a riot alert had just been triggered. But there were no fights, no weapons, no shouting, only a sound so faint it was barely caught by the cameras, a sharp metallic clang echoing from a cell deep in range 13. Within seconds, 5 guards in black armor moved in, shields up, hearts pounding. They reached the source. Inside stood an inmate, face calm, hands behind his back, eyes steady. "You think this place breaks people?" he said softly. "You should try Pelican Bay." The guards froze. That man had been in both, first Pelican Bay State Prison in California, then ADX Florence in Colorado. He was one of the few people alive who had seen the inside of both hells. And his story was about to reveal the answer to a question that haunted prison officials, journalists, and even the inmates themselves: which prison is tougher? But before anyone could ask another question, the man took a single step forward. His chain cuffs clinked against the floor. The camera zoomed in. He smiled, and said, "They built 2 cages for the same monster." Then the feed cut to black. ADX Florence and Pelican Bay, 2 names that make even hardened criminals shiver. One federal, one state. Both infamous. Both built for men the world calls the worst of the worst. But the truth about which one is harsher depends on how you define pain. ADX Florence, known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, was built for total control. Every inch of it was engineered to erase freedom, 23 hours a day locked inside a cell the size of a bathroom, made entirely of concrete. No contact. No noise. No human touch. It's where the United States locks up terrorists, spies, and killers who can't be trusted anywhere else. But Pelican Bay, hidden deep in Northern California's redwood forests, was born from chaos. Built in 1989, it became the center of California's prison wars. Inside its security housing unit, SHU, a place inmates call the hole, men were locked down 22 to 23 hours a day, just like ADX. But Pelican Bay added something different: violence. The walls shook from fights, gang orders, and revenge. Both prisons promised safety for the public, and suffering for those inside. But to find out which was tougher, you have to look beyond walls and wire, into the minds of the men who lived there. Our story begins with Marcus Reed, a man who had lived in both. A former gang lieutenant from Los Angeles, Marcus entered Pelican Bay in the 1990s during one of the bloodiest periods in California's prison history. He once said, "Pelican Bay wasn't a prison. It was a war zone." Inside Pelican Bay's SHU, communication wasn't done with words. It was done through knocks on walls, whispers through vents, or coded letters written in invisible ink made from toothpaste. The prison's layout, concrete cells in long, windowless corridors, made sound travel like ghosts. Guards patrolled silently, boots echoing off the floor, while inmates carved calendars into the wall just to remember what day it was. Marcus survived knife fights, lockdowns, and riots. He spent months without seeing the sky. His world was gray: the walls, the floor, even the food. In Pelican Bay, survival wasn't about strength, it was about staying sane. Then one day, a transfer notice came. He was being moved to ADX Florence. The guards told him, "You think Pelican Bay is bad? You haven't seen anything yet." The flight from California to Colorado felt like moving from one dimension of punishment to another. When the van pulled up to ADX Florence, Marcus said the silence hit harder than any riot. The air felt too still, the walls too ECT. There were no gangs here. No shouts. No chaos. Just stillness, and the hum of cameras that never turned off. He described it later as Pelican Bay turned inside out. In Pelican Bay, fear came from what you could see: the man next to you, the fight down the tier, the next lockdown. But in ADX, fear came from what you couldn't see: time. Hours melted into days, days into months, months into years. Marcus's cell in ADX was 7 feet wide and 12 feet long, with a concrete bed, desk, and stool molded into the wall. The window was only 4 inches wide and pointed toward the sky. He couldn't see the horizon, just a slice of blue or gray depending on the weather. Every sound was controlled, every meal slid through a slot, every movement tracked by infrared sensors. Guards called it clean isolation. Inmates called it the living tomb. At first, Marcus laughed when people said ADX was worse than Pelican Bay. He said, "I'd rather have silence than knives." But after 6 months, the laughter stopped and he began talking to himself. He started to forget what his own voice sounded like. He said the worst part wasn't the walls, it was the light. The bright white ceiling light never really turned off. Even when it dimmed, it hummed. He once said, "That hum is what drives people mad. It's the sound of nothing happening forever." While Marcus struggled to keep his mind, Pelican Bay was going through its own transformation. After years of lawsuits and public outrage, California started reforming its SHU program. The media called it the end of endless solitary. Meanwhile, ADX Florence only grew stricter. New federal rules made communication between inmates nearly impossible. Even letters were scanned, delayed, or destroyed. Some inmates had spent so many years there that they forgot how to talk to people. Marcus started writing notes, not to anyone, just to himself. He'd write, "Day 1000. Still breathing." He told his psychologist, "Pelican Bay broke my body. ADX is breaking my mind." One day, during a routine mental health check, Marcus asked a simple question: "If I survive both places, does that mean I win?" The psychologist didn't answer. That night, the power flickered, something rare in ADX. For a brief moment, the cameras went dark. In that silence, Marcus heard something he hadn't heard in years, a voice, from somewhere down the range. A man whispered, "Pelican Bay was worse." Then another voice replied, "No. This is worse." For 10 seconds, two men who would never see each other again shared one truth through concrete and air. Then the power came back on, and the silence returned. Weeks later, Marcus was transferred again, this time, back to California. He told reporters afterward that he couldn't tell which was tougher. "Pelican Bay hurts your body," he said. "ADX hurts your soul." But what happened next made even that comparison meaningless, because just a month after Marcus's interview aired, a riot broke out in Pelican Bay, the first in years. Meanwhile, in ADX Florence, an inmate in another unit stopped responding to his checks. When guards entered his cell, they found he'd written a single line on the wall in soap, "Now they're both the same." And from that moment, the debate wasn't about which prison was tougher. It was about whether anyone really survived either one. The investigation into that message would reveal something no one expected, a hidden connection between the two most feared prisons in America, and that's where the real story begins. The investigation started quietly, no headlines, no public statements, just a few phone calls between officials in Washington, Sacramento, and Denver. But behind the scenes, something strange was unfolding. The note written in soap inside the ADX Florence cell, "Now they're both the same," wasn't random. A forensic technician found the handwriting eerily similar to an inmate who died years earlier at Pelican Bay. The problem? That man's death was documented, buried, and closed. His name was Victor Cruz, a known shot caller during the California prison wars. So how did his handwriting end up inside a cell in Colorado? When the FBI got involved, they thought it was a hoax. Maybe inmates had seen the story on TV, maybe someone was copying it to stir trouble. But the more they looked, the stranger it got. The soap's chemical composition matched prison issue bars from Pelican Bay, not ADX Florence. And that was impossible. Prison supplies were strictly separated by state and federal lines. Someone, or something, had crossed that line. At the same time, an independent journalist named Rachel Torres was chasing the story. She'd spent years covering prison reform and had contacts inside both facilities, former guards, psychologists, and even released inmates. When she read about the ADX message, she said, "If that connection's real, it changes everything we know about isolation." Rachel flew to Colorado first. She was granted a tour of ADX Florence, but only the non-classified sections. As she walked through the corridors, the silence pressed against her like weight. The sound of her shoes echoed through the halls. Her guide, a senior officer named Captain Miller, spoke quietly as they passed rows of sealed steel doors. "These men aren't just locked up. They're erased from the world," he said. Rachel stopped near one empty cell, clean, cold, perfect. "T. S is where it happened?" Miller nodded. "We scrubbed it top to bottom. But I swear, the air still feels different here." "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "After we cleaned it, the lights in this section kept flickering. Maintenance said it was nothing. But," he trailed off and shook his head. "Anyway, you'll want to see the footage." They went to the control room. Miller played a 30-second clip from the night of the incident. The camera showed the cell, empty, white, quiet. Then, at exactly 3:14 a.m. the wall lights dimmed. For 1 second, faint movement flickered across the far wall. Not a shadow, more like a figure, just out of focus. Then the screen glitched. When the image returned, the message was already written on the wall. Rachel leaned closer to the monitor. "Wait, go back," she said. "Right before it flickers, what's that shape?" Miller froze the frame. In the reflection of the cell window, she saw it clearly, a faint outline of a man's face. But it wasn't the inmate who'd been housed there. The features didn't match. It looked older. Harder. Miller swallowed. "That's the part one can't explain." Meanwhile, over 1,000 miles away, inside Pelican Bay's security housing unit, things were unraveling again. After years of calm, guards started reporting strange activity in the SHU corridors, doors that clicked open by themselves, lights cutting out for no reason, and whispers in the vents. One officer described hearing someone tapping from inside a sealed, empty cell. He thought it was a joke until he checked the logs. That cell, cell 213, had been Victor Cruz's. By morning, the warden ordered an emergency lockdown. Inmates complained the air conditioning cut off for hours, making the cells unbearably hot. But what no one knew was that the same malfunction happened in ADX Florence on the same night, almost to the minute, when Maintina. NCE logs were compared later, the timestamps matched exactly. Rachel's sources inside Pelican Bay confirmed the rumor. It's like the two prisons breathe together now. To understand what was happening, Rachel began digging into both prisons' blueprints. She found that after September 11, the federal government had quietly upgraded communications infrastructure in high-security facilities, installing encrypted monitoring systems meant to share inmate data nationwide. The two prisons, one federal, one state, had become linked through a classified digital network. The system was meant to prevent gang leaders from coordinating across states. But what if that connection had gone deeper than data? She called one of her contacts, Dr. Harold Green, a retired prison psychologist who had worked at both facilities during the transition years. "Doctor, could isolation, extreme isolation, cause something like this?" The same phrases, the same timing, even hallucinations syncing across two prisons? Green hesitated. "You're asking the wrong question. It's not about what isolation does to the inmates, it's about what it does to the institutions." "What do you mean?" "Prisons remember," he said. "You put enough suffering in one place, and it leaves a mark. You connect two places like that, electronically, psychologically, and maybe the marks start to bleed together." Rachel's line went quiet for a second. "Are you saying the prisons are communicating?" "I'm saying," he replied softly, "that pain doesn't stay where you put it." Back at ADX, strange reports continued. Inmates began writing cryptic phrases on their walls, things like, "He's back in Pelican Bay," or "We're not alone." None of them were allowed to contact each other, yet they repeated the same words. The warden dismissed it as hysteria. But one night, when a guard walked past range 12, he heard someone whistling through the vent, a slow, steady tune. When he checked the logs later, he discovered the same tune had been reported in Pelican Bay's SHU the week before. Rachel gathered everything she had, footage, logs, maintenance reports, and prepared to publish. But before her story could go live, she received a call from an unknown number. A voice said, "If you release that story, you'll never step foot in another federal facility again." "Who is this?" "Someone who's seen both sides," the voice said. "You want to know which prison is tougher? Ask yourself which one changes the people who run it." The call ended. A week later, a storm hit Northern California. Lightning struck near Pelican Bay's power grid, cutting electricity for nearly 2 hours. At the exact same time, in Colorado, ADX Florence experienced a localized power surge that made several doors lock themselves. When systems came back online, security footage from both facilities showed something chilling. In each control room, for exactly 7 seconds, the camera feeds went completely white. And in those 7 seconds, both prisons registered one identical system message: sync complete. Rachel wrote in her notes that night, Pelican Bay breaks your body. ADX breaks your mind. But now they're connected. Maybe it's not about which one is tougher anymore. Maybe it's about which one will outlast the other. Then she underlined one final sentence: if the prisons are linked, then every time someone loses themselves in one, a piece of them wakes up in the other. Outside, snow fell over Colorado while rain poured over California. 2 prisons, 2 states, 2 nightmares, breathing the same air in silence, and far beneath both of them, in the lines of cables and circuits that connected them, a faint signal pulsed once, almost like a heartbeat. The debate was over. Now, it wasn't which prison was tougher. It was which one was alive.